Hello, and welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to be talking a little bit about SimBrief.com. So SimBrief is a website which hosts a very comprehensive flight planning tool which allows flight sim pilots to create some very detailed and realistic flight plans. Now, I don't know all of the features that SimBrief has to offer. I haven't really planned out this video, so do forgive me if I stutter or hesitate when trying to explain something. However, what I will be able to show off are some of the main features and show you how to make a flight plan. I will also explain how to read through the flight plan and find the essential information that you need for flying a detailed add-on aircraft, such as the PMDG 737NGX. So what you can see on your screen just now is the home page. Now, if you want to use the flight planning tools, you will need to create an account to log into the website. This is completely free, by the way. There's no cost to registering and using the website. To create an account, just go to this register menu and then click on create an account. Just click through the next page and then fill out this quick and easy online form. Once you've done that, you'll receive an email with a link to activate your account. Once you click on that link, you're registered and ready to go. Now, if you're not sure what SimBrief has to offer, you can get a good idea of the level of detail that it goes into. Even if you're not a member, you can click into this help menu here and look at the user guide. Now, this guide gives you a ton of information about the flight planning tools. If you scroll down the page, near the bottom, you'll find an amazing example of a flight plan that the website produces. I love this because you can move your mouse over the different pieces of information and a little tooltip will pop up and explain what that information is. And I would highly recommend that whether you're a member or not, to go and check that out. Anyway, what I'm going to do just now is log in and show you how I would generate a flight plan for one of my live streams, for example. Okay, and here I am logged in to SimBrief now. You can see I've got my little log out button in the top there. So to create a flight plan, first you go into the dispatch menu here and then go into dispatch system. Here you can see we get several different options here. I'm not going to worry about any of those. I'm just going to show you how to create a flight plan during this video. So if we just click on create new flights, it will bring you to this screen where you're going to be doing the bulk of your flight planning work. So there's a lot to kind of take in here, but don't worry, we're just going to go through it step by step and it'll be very easy once you know what you're looking for. So what I'm going to do for this video is I'm actually going to create a flight plan which mimics a real world flight, and that's going to be EasyJet flights 156 from Inverness to London Gatwick. So the first thing we do is we start off by entering the basic details of the flight here. So the airline would be the airline code, so that's EZY for EasyJet. And then we can enter in the flight number, so that's 156. Next, we need to select our departure airport. So what SimBrief needs is the ICAO code. So Inverness would be EGPE, and then we're going to Gatwick, which is EGKK. Now you see it takes a second, and it's filled out all of this information here. We'll talk about that again in a moment when we come to it. You can see here that it automatically calculates an alternate, and I believe that this alternate is Paris Charles de Gaulle. However, you can set in a manual alternate if you wish. So if I went to EGGW, for example, that would be Luton. The date, it will automatically put in the current day's date, so today is the 22nd of September. And then it gives us our departure time, and it asks for the departure time in Zulu. Now, the real world flight actually leaves at 16:25 Zulu, or 25 past 5 p.m. local time. So I'm just going to amend that there. Again, you can amend that to whichever you need. Next, we need to select the aircraft or the type of aircraft that we're going to be flying. So we have a bunch of basic options here. You can see we've got all sorts of different aircraft. We've got all variations of Airbuses. We've got ATR 72s. We've got all variations of Boeings. So on and so forth. Typically, the EasyJets will be flying in a 319 there. So we'll just select that. Now, there are some additional options here. If you have many add-on aircraft, you'll know that some of these add-on aircraft have different configurations. For example, The PMDG 737, depending on which livery you're flying with, the kind of the paint scheme, determines the kind of the equipment that's in the aircraft and also the configuration of the aircraft. Does it have two separate classes of seating? Does it have like a kind of like a business class and a standard class? If so, that affects the total number of seats on the aircraft and consequently how many passengers. So what you can do is you can click on this aircraft editor here, and what you can do is you can create custom aircraft. So if we take that 737 example, Boeing 737-800, proceed. Then you can see here that we can actually give it, we can enter the registration, we can do different categories, all sorts. We can determine how many passengers can be their maximum. We can change the weights if needed. We can change fuel factors. So you can set up custom aircraft if you wish. That's getting a bit too advanced for me. I don't know about that in detail, but that is an option available there. Alternatively, you have more options here as well. So you can see that we have a climb profile. You can set in the cost index manually if you wish. If you don't change any of these options, then SimBrief will just kind of randomize the options or randomize the numbers for you. But if you want to be very specific, for example, I believe EasyJet use a cost index of 5 across all of their flights, so you can set that in manually there. And there are different kind of fuel usage profiles here as well. You've got cost index, M78 and LRC. Don't know what those two are, but the options are there if you want. You also can change the registration there, the FIN number, and all sorts in there. Usually, I just leave everything on auto. I usually just check or choose the basic aircraft type from this list here, and go with that. Next section we have here is optional entries. So there again, it says exactly what I just said there. Fields are automatically calculated but can be overridden. So it gives us the time en route there. It gives us our departure runway at Inverness. So it tells us that we'll be departing runway 05. It gives us our arrival runway at Gatwick. So that'll be 26 left. Now the taxi out and taxi in, this is the amount of time in minutes that you expect to be taxiing. Now, I know Inverness Airport is a very small airport, so 20 minutes taxiing to the runway is very unrealistic. It'll be a bit more like 10 minutes, and that's a really safe estimate. Now, the reason it's important to maybe consider these numbers is because when you generate the flight plan, SimBrief takes into account all of this information, such as the time en route, the distance between the airports, the taxi times here, and it calculates how much fuel you need based on how long you expect to be taxiing, how long you expect to be flying, etc., etc. You can see here on the extra fuel, we can choose to have some extra fuel here. I'm not sure if these numbers represent kilograms or like 0.1 thousand kilograms or 0.1 thousand pounds or 0.1 hours worth of fuel. I don't know, I'm afraid. Altitude, so it'll automatically select the best cruising altitude given the wind conditions and weather conditions. Passengers, again, it can set to auto, or you can choose a manual number of passengers. There, I usually leave it on auto. You can choose how much cargo you want to take. I think this will be per £1,000 or per 1,000 kilograms. So 1.0 will be £1,000, or if you're using kilograms, that'll be 1,000 kilograms. Zero fuel weight is usually automatically calculated. However, you do have options to manually take that. And then you have your captain name and ID. This can be your name if you wish, and your ID is just a fictional number. It's not linked to your account number or anything like that. Next, you have some options over here on the right hand side. So this gives you some details to customize your what's called your OFP, or your operational flight plan. That's the actual plan that's generated once you've moved on from this page here. So the first thing you have is the layout. So all of the information, you'll be given all of the information. However, you can have it you can have the flight plan formatted in different ways. Like the same information will be given, but it might be given in a different format or in different locations on the flight plan. So Lido, I believe, is the is either the international standard for Europe or for America, I'm not sure. But if we have a look down the list here, you can see that we have several different airways. We've got British Airways, we've got EasyJet there, for example, we've got KLM. So if you want to be very specific, you can choose the OFP layout for whichever airline you're flying to make it a bit more realistic. Units here, this you might be changing more often depending on whether you're flying in America or whether you're flying elsewhere in the world. You can change the fuel measurements between kilograms and pounds, which will be very important for getting accurate fuel numbers there. The next kind of little section here, we've got contingency fuel and reserve fuel. Again, these are calculated automatically. However, you can choose again manually if you wish. So you can choose 5% or 5 minutes. I believe it takes whichever is less. You can have 2%, 3%, 5%, or an extra 5 minutes of contingency, 10 minutes, so on and so forth. And reserve fuel, you can see, is given in time there. Next, you have a bunch of tick boxes, and this is just additional information that you can choose to have in your OFP if you want. So you can have a detailed nav log, you can plan for ETOPS, you can plan step climbs. So if you're flying a long distance in a long haul aircraft, typically they start off their cruise at a relatively low cruising altitude, like maybe flight level 310, 330, and then as the aircraft gets lighter, as it burns off fuel, it becomes more economical to fly at a higher altitude. So on long haul flights, typically an aircraft will start off cruising at about the low 30,000 feet, and as the flight progresses and the aircraft gets lighter, the aircraft will steadily climb maybe 3,000 or maybe climb 2,000 feet from flight level 330 to 350, and then once it's burned off another couple of hours of fuel, it will go from 350 to 370 and so on and so forth. So it kind of, the altitude steps up as the flight progresses. SimBrief can calculate that for you, and you can have runway analysis, NOTAMs, which are just kind of notifications and alerts if there's any for example, if there's any construction work going on near an airport. NOTAMs will let a pilot know, just be aware there might be some cranes close to the airport, do not fly into them, sort of thing. And then again, FIR NOTAMs, flight information NOTAMs there. Flight maps. So once the flight plan is generated, you get a couple of maps as well. So those give you details about weather and wind conditions and stuff. You can choose to have those if you wish. And you can also change your AIRAC cycle. So if you use a service like Navigraph, for example, where you get up-to-date AIRAC data, you can see that SimBrief typically gives you AIRAC cycle 1603 by default. However, if you do use an AIRAC or a service like Navigraph, for example, you can link your Navigraph account, Navigraph access codes, so on and so forth there. You can link that, so you can use up-to-date AIRAC data if you wish. Now, moving down, we have the actual route here. So what this will do is this will look at these various kind of websites, such as FlightAware, SkyVector, Route Finder, and it will work out the kind of the most realistic or the most economical route automatically for you. And you can see that it gives you several different suggestions here. So you can see that we've got the Gussie waypoints, Nesdi, then Gao, pardon me, I'm burping, and then it gives you some airways as well. So UL 612 to DCS, UN 864 to Subuk. And now if you don't see an airway between two waypoints, most likely that's a direct flight between those two waypoints there. Now you can analyze the route, so this just kind of cross-checks the waypoints with the AIRAC cycle that you're using to make sure that the waypoints do exist in this AIRAC cycle. So you can analyze the route there, and you can say that the route is valid for the AIRAC cycle 1603. Now you do have options for alternates here as well, if you wish. I don't know too much about that. And also ETOPS. So ETOPS relates to, and if you're flying a dual engine aircraft and one engine fails, ETOPS regulations determine how far or how long the aircraft can continue flying with just one engine. And you can see here we also get a little map of the flight there. So you can see we're starting in Inverness, and you can see the flight plan at the moment, or the planned flight plan takes us down towards Glasgow and then down the west coast over Birmingham and into London Gatwick there. So once you're happy that everything is as you want it, you just hit on this button here which says Generate OFP. It will ask, are you sure you want to do that? Click on yes, and it will take a few seconds just to create that for you. Okay, and once that has finished doing its thing, then you're going to be brought to this new page, which is your OFP summary and everything else there. So what you can do is you can get all of the basic information out of the OFP here. So you can see we've got airline is EasyJet, flight number 156, aircraft is an A319, starting at Inverness, going to Gatwick, alternate is London Luton. And now some of this information is absolutely essential to flying. So the first one that you'll need if you're going to be setting up a flight is of course the cruising altitude. So you can see SimBrief has given us a cruising altitude of flight level 370. You can see it also gives us our airtime, which will be 1 hour and 15 minutes. The next piece of essential information here is the block fuel. So this is the total amount of fuel that you need for this flight. And this takes into account reserve fuel, contingency fuel, actual trip fuel. Everything that you need is calculated in this block fuel here. So when you're setting up a flight, this is the amount of fuel that you want to be loading into the aircraft when you're in the simulator. You can see here that it gives us some detailed routing here. So after we take off, we're going direct to Gussie, direct to Nesdy, and so on and so forth. Now, if you are going to and from an airport which has departure procedures and approach procedures, it will also begin and end the routing with a departure procedure and an approach or an arrival procedure. Now, because Inverness is a small airport, it doesn't have any departure procedures, but you can see here, Willow 3B, that will be our arrival procedure going into Gatwick. So you can also make a note of that there as well if you wish. So you can click here to show the map. So that's pretty much the same view that you had before. I'm going to click on that just now, and it just pretty much does the same view that you had on the previous screen there. And then below that, this is where you get your proper OFP. Now, unlike the user guide, you cannot mouse over these and get the various bits of detail, but I'm going to just take a moment just to revise this and then talk through everything and show you where to find all the essential information you need to conduct your flight. Okay, so let's start reading through this OFP here. So at the top here, we've got the flight number, we've got the dates, we've got departure airports, EGPE, Inverness, arrival airport, EGKK, which is Gatwick, aircraft type, the aircraft tail number, and again, we've got the dates across there. So the essential information that you need. So the first thing that you kind of come across reading top to bottom, the first thing that you can find out is your cost index, and that's just at the top on the right here, which is CRZ CIS, and that says CI of 5. So the cost index that we would need to enter into the aircraft would be 5. The next piece of data, which is often needed, is the average winds. So for the FMS in your aircraft to accurately calculate what time you're going to be reaching certain waypoints, it's often good to pick up this average wind conditions along the path of the flight here. So you can see the average winds for this flight will be 293 at 25 knots, or coming from a direction of 293 at 25 knots. Now it's worth noting that these wind conditions are given based on the current real world weather conditions. So if you're using historic weather in your flight, this might not be worth picking up. But if you're going to be flying with current real world weather conditions, then simbrief.com has you covered on that front there. The next bit of data which also helps is to pick up the average ISA. So I'm not sure 100% what ISA is or how ISA affects flying, but at your cruising altitude, there's sort of like a standard altitude which is set, much like you have a standard barometric pressure of 29.92 or 1013 millibars. There is an average temperature for a given cruising altitude. Now, depending on the current wind conditions, that could change. That could be higher than average or lower than average. So if it might be worth making a note of the ISA, and you can see here P003 means that it's plus 3 degrees above the standard currently. So for some of the more details add-on aircraft like the PMDGs, it's worth picking that up there. Okay, now moving down, we get some information about our fuel here. So you can see trip fuel. So it's estimated that we're going to be using 3,034 kilograms of fuel during the flight, and our flight time is going to be 1 hour and 15 minutes, as you can see there. We've got contingency of 15 minutes, and that equates to 579 kilograms of fuel there. And it also gives us how much fuel we'll need to divert to our alternate, which you can see there, LTN is Luton, and we need approximately 800 kilograms there. It also gives us our fine res here, so this will be our reserve fuel. So when we're setting up our reserve fuel, we would enter in 1041 kilograms of fuel, which gives us 30 minutes worth of flying time there. And then just at the bottom here, you can see it says block fuel again. So this is the total amount of fuel that needs to be loaded on, which is 5552 kilograms there. Next, we can skip all of this information. None of this is official or proper or anything. It gives you like a fictional dispatcher, gives you your name there, gives you a fictional telephone number and stuff, just to kind of mimic what a real OFP would look like. But the next major piece of information you'll look at is the route here. So you can see that as it gave us before in the summary, or as it gave us on the previous page, it gives us our departure airport and our departure runway, EGPE runway 05, and then we're flying direct to Gussie, direct to Nesdy, direct to Gao, and then we're taking airway UL612 to DCS, and so on and so forth. And you can see that we have our arrival procedure here, Willow 3B, and then our arrival airport, London Gatwick on runway 26 left. Scrolling down, it gives us our different sort of timings for the flight. So you've got out, off, on, in. So basically what this means is out is the time that you start your engines and push back from the gates. So we should be pushing back at 1725 Zulu or 1725 local. Thank you very much, Microsoft, for that alert. I really don't care right now. Off is the time that you actually take off. So we're estimated to be taking off at 1635 Zulu, 1735 local. On is the time that you're estimated to be landing, which is 1750 Zulu, and in is the time that you're expected to be parking on stand at your arrival airport. So the total amount of time for the flight, when you take into account taxiing and everything, is 1 hour and 33 minutes, and you'll notice that's different to our air time. So we're expected to be flying for 1 hour 15 minutes, but if we're expected, if you take into account maneuvering and all that sort of stuff, 1 hour 33 minutes for the entire flight. Next, down below, we have a section about weights, and this is another piece of information that you absolutely need, is the number of passengers on the flight. So pax, and we've got 104 passengers there. And then if we've got any cargo, you would pick up the cargo from there. It gives us our zero fuel weights, although most add-on aircraft automatically calculate that for you anyway. And then it also confirms the fuel weight again. So our fuel was 555 something kilograms, but you can see here it rounds it up to 5.6 tons of fuel. Below that, you can see that we've got some details about all of the different waypoints and airways that we're going to be flying. Now, there's a couple of bits of information that you can kind of glean from this. You can see that we've got the Gussie, then we're going direct to Nesdy, and so on and so forth. Now, there are nav aids in the world which have the same name. So, for example, there might be 2 waypoints in the world called Nesdy, and when you enter this into your FMS, your flight management system on your add-on aircraft, it might say, right, I've got several kind of nav aids or waypoints with the same name. Which one do you want me to use? Now, it's often important to pick the right one. So you can pick the right one because it gives you the coordinates for that waypoint here. So you can see we've got north 5707.3 and west 00408.8. So if you if you ever find yourself in a situation where you have multiple waypoints with the same name, you can confirm which one you need because you get the GPS coordinates for it here. You can also double check the cruising altitude here. This number at the top in this column here, 370, so that gives you the flight level. And if you want to know more about these numbers, you can look through them yourself, but you can see that it kind of gives you the layout here. So you've got the airway, the position, which is the actual name, its identifier, and also its frequency if it's a VOR, like Glasgow down here, for example. Then you've got the latitude, longitude, and then so on and so forth. You've got all this additional information here. You got like fuel on board and how much fuel has been burned as well over on the right here. So yeah, and then you've got a lot more information, which you really is not essential for flying in a simulator. But if you are a flight sim purist and you want all the information, all of it is available there for you. Now, if you want to avoid manually entering all of the route data, you can sort of shortcut that and automatically load it into an aircraft. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you will see this section here, which is flight plan downloads. So you can download the flight plan that's been generated in the correct format for the aircraft that you're using. So you've got Aerosoft Airbus, the CRJ, and you've got all sorts of different formats for all sorts of different aircraft here. You've got Majestic, PMDG, Quality Wings, so on and so forth. And you can also pre-file on a network here if you use one of those services. So very simply, if you wanted to download the flight plan, just click on download, you get the little file there. You would download that, stick that into the relevant folder on your computer, and you can then access that flight plan once you're back in the simulator and once you're in the plane there. So that just saves you time not having to enter everything manually on the CDU or the FMS. Okay, and that pretty much wraps up everything for SimBrief. Of course, if you are a member, I would highly recommend going back to the user guide and reading through that. That gives you a lot more detail and a lot more education on the different the different tools and the little bits and pieces which are available. Things like setting up your own custom aircraft and things like, updating your AIRAC cycles and that. So it's a fantastic tool. As I said, it's completely free to register and use. And as I said, I use it for every time I'm doing an IFR based flight. I use SimBrief.com. It's a fantastic website. I'm not getting paid to say that. I really do just love this website. Anyway, that's going to wrap up the video today. So as I always finish off my videos, firstly, I just want to say a big thank you to my Patreon supporters for your continued support there. It really does mean a lot to me. And for everyone else, thank you all very much for watching. Take care out there, and I will catch you all later.